conflict isn't bad. I say conflict just is. It's not bad or good. How we navigate it is whether it's bad or good. Conflict is actually necessary, I believe. It's clarifying. It helps us to identify what's real.
Welcome to Mending Divides Podcast, your source for unfiltered conversations about conflict and how to deal with it. I'm your host, Jer Swigart, and today's conversation is with Nina Barnes. She's a spiritual director and conflict consultant who has spent her life honing her craft. We talk about how conflict is inevitable and necessary in relationships, conflict styles, how to tell the truth with kindness, which is not the same as being nice, and the problems with agreeing to disagree. Nina provides strategies for constructive conflict resolution that will help you deepen relationships through disagreement. Here's our conversation. So let's dive right in. I'm just moved by the way that you've spent so much of your time and energy and life working with leaders and organizations as they deal with conflict. And I wonder, Nina, how do you think about conflict, generally speaking, and how are you also thinking about conflict right now?
Yeah. In some ways, it's the same answer. It's something that I said kind of off the cuff, probably about 10 years ago, when there was a sharp conflict on the campus. I worked for a university. There was a very sharp conflict on campus. And I made this statement in chapel: conflict is inevitable. Division is a choice.
Yeah,
Conflict
go.
just
Say more.
is.
Say more on that.
Yeah, conflict just is.
Yes.
We have conflict all the time, but because it's small, we don't name it as a conflict, right? We don't even have to have another person around to have conflict. We can have conflict with ourselves. And I joke sometimes and say, I have conflict every day. I would eat chocolate, dark chocolate, all day long.
Yeah.
So the conflict is, I shouldn't.
Yeah.
But maybe if I have a little, right? We can laugh at that, but that's a conflict between what I say my stated goals are,
Yeah.
and then the actions that I'm making. So if we can look at conflict as it just is.
Yeah.
You want to go to a certain restaurant and your partner doesn't want to go to the same restaurant. That's a conflict.
Yeah.
Because when we can solve it, we don't think of it as a conflict.
Yeah.
It's almost like we put conflict in the category of things we can't solve. And that doesn't serve us well, because then we never see a success. We never see ourselves moving through a conflict. So I work with people, as you said, all day long around conflict. And I say, it just is. And we need to stop trying to avoid it, because being human and living in community, living in a society, means we're going to have conflict. Division is a choice. We get to decide when the conflict is so sharp that we're willing to divide over it. That's the part that we have choice over. Conflict, we really don't have a choice on whether there's going to be conflict. We have a choice on how we navigate the conflict.
That's right. That's right. No, I'm thinking around conflict, if I were to define it, would be the collision of actions, ideas, words, forces that disrupt the status quo.
Yeah.
And if that's a definition of conflict, then that even would suggest that conflict isn't necessarily bad.
Exactly. And conflict isn't bad. I say conflict just is. It's not
just is
bad or good. How we navigate it is whether it's bad or good.
That's right.
Conflict is actually necessary, I believe. It's clarifying. It helps us to identify what's real. If we never have a conflict, then I would say, what are we doing? Are we just agreeing? Are we just, I don't know what that looks like. And I think it just isn't even realistic. So conflict isn't bad. Conflict surfaces something. It surfaces an opportunity for clarity, right?
Yeah. No, that's really helpful. I feel like most of us, our experience of conflict, though, has been so wildly uncomfortable, or maybe even we've absorbed so much pain, not because of conflict, but because conflict has been handled so poorly in our experience, that the connotation then is conflict is terrible and is to be avoided, or
Yeah.
maybe differently, conflict is to be conquered. I'm to win as a
Mhm.
way of avoiding pain that I've experienced before,
Yes.
you
And
know?
people tend to have a conflict resolution style.
Right,
I
right,
mean, the three most common would be two you've already named. One, I'm just going to avoid it at all
avoid it.
costs.
Yeah,
The other is I'm going to win.
yeah.
I'm going to have an aggressive style and I'm going to win. The other that you named, I'm going to avoid it. That's a passive style.
Mhm.
The style that's more helpful is the assertive style, meaning I show up.
Yeah, yeah,
But even assertive gets mislabeled and thought of as aggressive,
yeah. Right,
depending culturally,
right.
right? What's the cultural context and what's the cultural contract within that context? If
Mhm.
the cultural contract is we're never going to handle conflict directly, then the person who does has violated that contract. And now they're the problem.
Yep, yep, that's right. The one who actually wants to get honest about it then becomes the
Yes,
problem.
becomes a
Yeah,
problem because
that's
you
right.
have violated
Yeah.
this community's social contract, even though it may be unnamed. But I know people who talk about it from birth. This is what you just don't
Yeah.
talk about it. So the person that does is now the problem that everybody can unite around.
Mhm. Yeah, that's right. Then we're scapegoating, then we're off to
Right.
the races. Yeah, this idea that conflict is inevitable, I wonder what does it take for us to actually shift in our orientation from conflict as a threat to be avoided to conflict as an opportunity to embrace?
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear you reflect on that. And then also, if it's an opportunity, what happens on the other side of conflict?
Yeah.
So if we want to if we want to help people shift in their mindset, why is it worth them shifting this mindset? What do they get if they start to see this as an opportunity?
Yeah. On the other side of it, even as I think as people start to realize, oh, this person is operating in good faith. Like they want to move through the conflict too. Then we can develop a trust and appreciation. And on the other side of it, there is a depth of relationship that didn't exist
Yeah,
before.
there it is.
Even when the relationship was deep, it's gone deeper
Right.
because now oh, I can really trust this person.
That's right.
They weren't trying to win, they were trying to move through the conflict. We were seeking clarity.
Yes.
The goal wasn't domination and destruction. And so now there's a sweetness that's available in that relationship and a depth and increased trust when we move through a conflict.
I love that. I was in a conversation this week with somebody and they were asking me the question like what happens like best case scenario, what happens if we develop the tools to navigate conflict well?
Yeah.
And I was contrasting it with if I have a shared experience with somebody, that's meaningful and like intimacy really grows. If we go and
Yes.
experience something together, or even if we go work on a project together or whatever it is, it like that strengthens the fabric of friendship and deepens the currency of trust. But nothing in my experience of life so far deepens the currency of trust like navigating through conflict with one another for the very reason that you said. If we can do this well with one another, of course, we're going to make mistakes along the way. But if we can do this well and be generous with ourselves and one another, on the other side of the conflict, we get to turn around and go, look what we just did. Made it through that. If we can make it through that, we can make
Yeah.
it through anything.
Anything.
So it makes me wonder, is conflict a crucible unique unto itself in its ability to foster trust between two people?
I believe so. Now I know that's part of my wiring. I don't trust when everything is just going smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only trusting that just so far because I'm expecting people to differentiate. Right? We can't agree on everything.
Yeah.
So are you withholding? And so I might say to somebody, and it might start off in a joking way, we've never had a conflict. Why is that? Have you brought your whole self
Ah.
to this?
So if we haven't experienced conflict, then perhaps one of us is holding something back.
Yeah. Because we don't trust,
Yeah.
because we're afraid. Sometimes I think people are afraid to know what the other person thinks because then they're going to have to deal with that difference of opinion. And so we're either one or both parties are holding something back, which means we're just on the surface. We don't really have a depth of relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that's really insightful. You brought something up a little bit earlier about approaches to conflict, and I'm fascinated by this. I might suggest 5 approaches. I think there's avoidance, like we've talked about.
Yeah.
I think there's the accommodator. The accommodator is somebody who's puts a higher priority on relationship than the actual issue, and it's kind of like default, like it doesn't really matter to me. What matters is your happiness.
Yeah.
I think there's a compromiser who like gives a little and takes a little. I think there's a controller. That's probably the dominator, the one who has to win. And then the 5th approach would be the empathetic problem solver. This is the person who values relationship and issue and is willing and able to lean in. I think that these approaches, whether it's 3 or 5 or more, I think that they're modeled for us. It's a learned behavior. Like we all have a preferred approach, and it's probably either been modeled for us or we're reacting to what has been modeled for us.
Yes.
Which means that I would argue that we have all been really adequately trained to deal with conflict.
Absolutely.
Through upbringing and culture in particular, it's been modeled and we either replicate or react. Right?
100%. 100%.
Right. So which is a mind shift, because when you and I, who's like conflict is our thing, we are with people in conflict. We are guides for their journey through conflict. How many times have you heard someone say, I don't know how to do conflict? I know you do.
Yeah.
It's just maybe not working.
Yes. We're socialized in that way. And in some families of origin, it's not even explicitly stated.
Yeah.
To your point, it's modeled. And we pick up on it implicitly. We watch what happens when somebody dares to name it. If it's a family that is a withholder, if it's a family that expects direct communication and they withhold, we see how that's handled and we accommodate. To your point, we may at some point go, that doesn't work. I'm going to learn another way. Or maybe that's how our home life was or is. And then we're in a workplace. So we are actually shifting our conflict styles potentially.
Yes.
Because that's what the environment requires.
That's right. That's what I wanted to get to this. And then I want you to get personal. I want you to identify what's your native and preferred approach and how is that shaped in you. But before we go there, like this notion, even the 3 that you mentioned or the 5 that I mentioned, I think we're also really quick to assign a hierarchy to, or like a superiority to maybe one over the other. So the one that I mentioned at the end, the empathetic problem solver, that seems like a really wise, mature way of navigating conflict, unless you're in a burning building.
Yes.
Right?
We need somebody.
You need a controller in that moment who's like, I don't care about anybody's feelings. We got to get out the house.
Yes.
You know? And so my point being, we have to actually adapt based on the circumstances. Sometimes accommodation is really appropriate.
Yes.
Whereas controlling, if that's your preferred approach, would actually be inappropriate in that setting. So what does it mean to grow in our fluency while we have a native approach? What does it mean to grow in our fluency of these other approaches? It's interesting, hey?
Well, it is. And even like I appreciate the expansion to the 5 because the other 2 that you named are included. I include them in the assertive.
Yeah.
Because it's not aggressive, it's not passive, it's assertive and inclusive. But I appreciate the way you've expanded it and actually named what those other 2 are. And here's where communication style and conflict. Right? So what you named even about the burning building, right? You need command and you need a commanding communication style.
Yeah.
The conflict might not happen until after. When somebody says, I didn't like the way you spoke to me. So that person who in the moment communicated really in a domineering way, now outside of that danger might go, I hear that. And they might shift to
the empathetic problem solver. Tell me more.
Right?
Yes.
Because now they're outside of the danger. And so that's how fluid That really is how
Yes.
fluid. As you know, I have two granddaughters. When
Hmm.
they're about to touch something that they shouldn't touch that could harm them, there's a whole different Grandma Nina that they
Oh,
see.
yeah. That's not the accommodator or the
It's
compromiser.
not, no, because
Yeah.
I need the removal of
Yes.
danger.
Yes.
Then we're going to sit down and talk about how I potentially hurt their feelings
Hmm.
because my voice was elevated to get their attention because they weren't
Hmm.
listening
Hmm.
and it was danger.
So what you and I need to create together, Nina, and friends, maybe you all can get behind this with us, is we need to create a Duolingo for conflict where we identify our preferred approach, but then we can actually grow the skills in the other five and
Yeah.
then tie that in with
And then try
communication style and tie that in with Enneagram or MBTI, like all of these things.
all of the things.
What's your preferred approach? And how, as you reflect on your own life and story, how has that approach been honed in you?
Yeah. Well, and before I get to that, I'm laughing because neither you or I are put off by each other interrupting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some people might be like, gosh, are they in conflict? No, it's just how we communicate
Yeah. Yeah.
with each other.
Totally.
So I
Oh,
have a very direct style.
yeah.
And that is the way that I was raised. So in my family of origin, in my home, it was direct communication. And that is my preferred style. However,
Mm.
I live in an environment, I live in Minnesota. The preferred style
Ooh.
is not direct. In fact,
Mhm.
direct means aggressive.
Yes.
And so I work with people on no, direct means you're clear in your communication. It
Mm.
doesn't mean aggressive. Those words are not a direct overlay.
Mhm.
I believe direct communication is a kindness.
Mm.
I believe indirect communication is being nice.
Mm.
And there's a whole distinction between niceness and kindness.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I am definitely a direct communicator. A high value of mine is to be kind.
Yeah.
But I also believe that an aspect of kindness is clarity
Clarity.
and
Yeah.
directness.
Mhm. Mhm.
Directness doesn't mean meanness. It just means you're going to know I'm never going to keep you off guard.
Mm.
I'm never going to have you off balance, wondering what I'm thinking. And I think that's a grace and a kindness.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go there around this distinction between nice and kind. I feel that the world that we're living in, we ain't got time for niceness anymore, but I think we have to be kind. And this
Yes.
is something that I've learned from you. And so, especially as we're navigating really tenuous, I feel like relationships just in general are really fragile.
Yes.
And our default is to be nice when what's needed is kind. Help us understand what you mean by that.
Yeah. So, an aspect of niceness is a person being pleasant,
Hmm.
agreeable, which means you're not actually going to get to what's true.
Yeah. Okay.
If the value is to be agreeable and pleasant and friendly, that's very surface level.
Mhm.
And often niceness is a tool of self-protection. If
Go deeper there. Yeah. What do you
right?
mean?
Meaning I don't want to have a conflict. I
Got
don't
you.
want anybody to be mad at me. I want to protect myself. And so I'm not going to say the things that I really am thinking. I'm going to be nice. It could be in a setting with somebody who is really domineering and aggressive. Niceness can have that person take a step back because niceness can also look like submission.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just not real. I don't trust niceness because
Mm.
it's only going to go so far. And
Mm.
niceness is actually not going to be helpful if I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're being nice and you watch me doing something that is harmful to myself or others, but your commitment is to be nice, then you're not going to be helpful to me.
Yeah.
You're not going to be truly caring.
Yeah.
So kindness cares. Kindness seeks the well being of the other person, even when it may not feel good. Kindness tells the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Kindness says, I care about you enough that I need to share some things with you.
Mm.
Here's some things I see. that are not serving you well.
Mm-hmm.
Kindness cares enough to risk that there's going to be a conflict.
I mean, what's popping for me is this idea that niceness is about self-preservation. That's a next level for me. Niceness, I think, in our society has been equated with polite, but actually to place it more in the space of self-preservation, image management, reputation protection,
Yeah.
things like this is a different way to think about niceness, kindness as a gift in that it's the way that disruption of the status quo becomes tolerable. Or
Yes.
perhaps kindness is the way that we lean into truth. It's the entrance into it. It causes me to say, perhaps I can go here. Yeah. Huh.
And sometimes people say truth telling, and I'm going to tell you the truth, and we all brace.
Yeah.
Because the how matters.
Yeah.
Right. But when it's in the context of kindness, we already have a sense of that's going to be helpful and thoughtful.
Yes.
Where truth telling can be, bracing and, hair blown back. Yeah, you said the truth, and wow, that was not kind.
So let's think about this circumstantially for a second, because truth telling with kindness, you've done this in my life. You have honed this skill. I have to imagine that your ability to be kind, the moments when you select truth in kindness, how does that correlate to the currency of trust between you and that other person? In other words, like, I feel like we live in this moment in time where it's tell the truth and speak truth to power. Yeah. Okay. But if I'm screaming the truth, even with kindness to someone with whom I have no trust, what is the outcome of that? So speak to the intersection of kindness and trust and how that opens the door for constructive conflict.
Yeah, because it's what's your goal, right? If the goal is just to shout the truth and let the chips fall where they may, and the goal isn't relationship, okay, that'll work. It's not going to be a relationship, no, unless somebody is really ready to absorb what is potentially abusive communication.
Yeah.
Right? So kindness is going to say some things first. Like, we are not agreeing right now. Here's why it's important to me that we listen to each other, because I care about you. Well, now there's it. I've already said the why.
Yeah.
Or I've heard you say some things that it's borderline dehumanizing. And I've not experienced you that way before. I've not heard you say those things before. What's happening?
Yes. That's the modeling. Thank you for modeling that, because I think this is the craft that I've observed you hone, is the ability to be real time in a conversation and identify the moment when a thing was said and how it's an inconsistency in what you've experienced in that relationship previously.
Yeah.
And how you surface it, like the courage that it takes to surface it, but you do it with kindness that then invites the other person to go, gosh, wow, let me think about that. It invites a deeper process rather than I'm now so wildly offended because you didn't accuse me. You invited me to consider something.
Yeah. And part of it is I am curious. Like, what is happening? Like, how did you go from where I've known you all the way over to here? What's happening in your life? Who are the voices that you're listening to? Because you sound harsh or you sound judgmental. And that may be hard for you to hear, but I care about you. So I'm going to name some things on how I'm experiencing you and the surprise. Now, if it isn't a surprise, I might say, well, I've noticed a shift in you. And I'm no longer surprised by it because it's become a pattern. But it still disturbs me. It grieves me because that's not who I've always known you to be.
Yeah.
And
Fundamentally,
so
I care about you.
I care about you.
Yes.
If I don't care about a person, because we're talking about interpersonal conflict, right?
Right.
If I don't care about you, I'm not navigating the conflict. Why am I using my energy? Because I'm not trying to control you. But if I care about you, I really want to try to disrupt,
Mm-hmm.
using your words, disrupt the status quo or what's
Yeah.
become the status
What's
quo.
become the
And
status
if I
quo?
can slow down the thinking, and I
Mm,
never say what's not true. Like I'm not going to, hype somebody up if it's not true. But if I'm saying to somebody, here's how I've known you. You are considerate, you're caring. I've seen you do some really compassionate, go out of your way, acts for people.
mm-hmm.
And now I hear you say, well, those people, like, hold up, hold up, hold up. What's
Mm,
going on?
mm-hmm.
And I'm asking you that. And I will say to somebody, you don't have to explain it to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to talk about it because it is affecting our relationship,
Yeah. Yeah.
affecting how I see you.
Yeah. This is the other piece that I admire in the way that you navigate conflict is like you are aware of what's happening interpersonally and how it threatens the integrity of our relationship.
Yeah.
And part of the way that I've observed you fight like a peacemaker for a relationship is saying, hey, there's a thing that's happening. And I don't know if you use this language necessarily. I don't think you do, but there's a thing that's happening that is threatening the integrity of our relationship, or it's potentially interrupting our friendship.
Yeah.
What I admire about that is you keep centering the importance of the relationship and the other person. It's like you're centering that rather than your own feeling of offense. So, how do you do that? Because
Yeah.
I've also watched you absorb in the midst of some hard conversations. I've watched you absorb, maybe even metabolize some of the hard things. Like you don't speak up and do that right away. I've watched you, there's an absorption that you, and then there's a moment where you're like, okay, now I'm going to keep us accountable to our relationship.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you do that? Walk us through that process.
Yeah. One, it depends on what the topic is. Two, while I'm doing that, there's a lot of self-talk.
Like
I'm
what? Say, tell us what.
Yeah, I'm doing two things at once. I'm listening to the person and I'm telling myself, don't react, listen.
Mm,
Don't react, ask more questions.
mm. How
Ask,
aware are you? How aware in those moments that's happening in your mind? But you and I also have the ability with our eyes
yeah,
to communicate that we are displeased. That
yes,
has power to shut someone down or intimidate them. So, okay, so here's some of the mantra work you're doing. What are you doing with your face and your
yeah.
eyes?
I love that you asked that. So a tell for me, and people that know me well know when I do this.
Okay. Finger on lip, lean in. Okay.
I'm literally shutting my mouth.
Okay. So physically, you are putting a finger over your lips.
And it helps me to remember, shut up
Okay.
and listen. Because I have a very expressive face. And I know sometimes, it's easier on a virtual call because I can see myself, but other times,
Yeah.
like I can feel my face wanting to go, what?
Heck.
Or
Yeah.
really lean in. And so the doing this, I will do this, but
Mm.
not in but more like I'm thinking. That way I can pause my lizard brain.
So for those of us who are listening in, her first gesture is a finger over her lips. Her second gesture is like kind of a looking away from the person and looking off
Oh, yeah,
just to consider. And that's kind of a centering moment for you.
it is.
Okay.
Because the person is then looks at me and says, oh, she's thinking.
Yes.
And I am. They don't know I'm thinking and working really hard to not react. And my mantra might be ask questions and then respond. Reaction isn't helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Don't react. Don't
Mm-hmm.
react. Don't react. And sometimes I'm successful and sometimes I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to paint this picture that I'm always successful. Sometimes I'm not. And I'll say, you know what, can we pause?
Mm.
Because I'm concerned that I'm about to say something. It can't be unheard.
Yeah.
Right? Once
Yeah.
you hear it, it can't. So I need to pause. You
Mm-hmm.
may feel okay. I need to pause.
Mm-hmm. So there's another technique, friends, for us as we're thinking about this. Like Nina, your ability to be so in tune with what's happening inside of yourself that you're actually cautious about hurting in response.
Yeah.
So there are moments when you actually call for a pause
Mhm.
in the conversation to prevent harm.
Exactly.
Even
And
if
I'll
you've
name
been
it.
harmed,
Yeah.
you're going to pause to prevent harm to the other.
Yeah. And I will also say when somebody, they're getting really big, I will also call for a pause and say, we need to pause for a second because you're escalating and you might say something you can never take back.
Ooh.
Even though you may apologize, I won't be able to unhear that.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I forgive you, it's been said. So you need to pause for a minute.
Mm-hmm. Oh, which is such an invitation. Then if this is between you and me, it's such an invitation then for me to check myself,
Yeah.
to re-engage maybe my executive function because I'm thinking reptilian brain and now I want to win.
Yeah.
It's interesting how in the way that we deal with this, we
Yeah.
can actually root for one another and bring one another back into our own bodies
Yeah.
and prioritize the relationship rather than being
Yes.
right.
Because that's the thing.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I can very quickly, and I won't even say second nature, first nature for me to want to win.
Yeah, me too.
I'm a
I want to win.
competitive, I want to win.
Yeah.
I want to win, whether it's an argument or a game, I want to win.
Yeah.
So if I center on positions, then my brain is coming up with all the arguments and the logic to win and convince you of my position.
Mm-hmm.
If I center on the relationship, then the position becomes secondary.
Mm.
Even though the position might be very important, what I want to establish first is the only reason we're having this conflict is because we're in relationship.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I could easily walk away.
Yeah.
And I don't want to walk away. So I try hard to help the person understand how much I value the relationship. I value them as a person. I try to be very specific. Here's what I appreciate about you.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, here's where I'm challenged.
Mm.
Here's where I'm challenged by you.
Yeah. And for those of you who are watching this, you're seeing her face. For those of you who are listening, like the gentleness in Nina's face
Mhm.
is the kindness. The sound of your voice is the kindness. The pause from the talking points to reprioritize the relationship and the importance of the relationship is the kindness. Right. And it's amazing how when we just use these subtle techniques, it continues to disarm ourselves and the other person. Right. And that feels critical. Now, here's the question. We're also in this moment in time where an easy exit ramp to
Yeah.
conflict is let's agree to disagree.
Yeah.
And I don't personally like to agree to disagree. Not that I need us to have
Mhm.
like full agreement, but like I just feel like that's too easy of an off ramp. And
Yes.
I think there's probably more gifts for us to explore if we continue to lean into this a little bit. I've heard you comment a little bit on when it's okay for you to agree to disagree, but when it's not okay.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. First of all, I completely agree that this whole agree to disagree is very, it's unsatisfying.
Yeah.
It's dissatisfying because nothing changed. And it's also a power move.
Mhm. Ooh,
It's a power move for people
okay.
when they say,
Yeah.
well, we're just going to have to agree to disagree.
Yeah,
Because
because
basically you just shut down the
that's
conversation.
right. They press the button, the
They
eject
press the
button.
button.
Yeah. Good
And
point.
so you've now shut me off and I might have more than I want to share.
Yeah.
So I will say to somebody, are we really at the point where we need to agree to disagree, or are we at the point where you're just done with having the conversation?
Mm,
Because if you're done having the conversation, is that for today or is that for always? Like, when
mm,
are we coming back to this? Because it's very incomplete at this point. I think you just don't want to talk about it, or the points that I've shared, you don't want to take in.
yeah.
You really don't want to take that in. And so you're just saying, you're basically telling me to shut up.
Mhm.
So then I want you to name that. I
Mm,
actually want you to just name it instead of us going to this, we're going to agree to disagree. Just tell me, Nina, I don't want to talk about this
yeah.
today or ever. Okay. That's very different than we need to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
That's saying you don't want to talk about it. And now I have to respect that. But
Mhm.
this agree to disagree makes me complicit in
Ooh,
some weird passive thing. I'm not going to be complicit in that.
right. Because what are you going to do? Say, no, I don't. You're actually like overstepping the boundary that they're trying to establish somehow by
Right.
saying, actually, no, you don't get to do that. And,
Right. So, yeah, let's really define what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's good.
Uh,
And again,
we're,
like the technique, I want to keep pulling technique here. You just, with gentleness and kindness, you just keep on inviting yourself and the other to live in reality, in the truth. Let's just
let's
be
just,
honest.
let's be honest.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And if you're saying it's too much, oh, I've just got so much. Okay, then that is true and real. And so then let's come back to this another day.
Yeah.
If it's important. If it's not important, okay, we can let it go.
Yeah.
But if it's important, we need to come back to it another day. Because let's just say the first scenario, the person really does say, I just don't want to talk about it. I really just want you to stop talking. That person's decision to do that has changed the dynamic of our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Our relationship just changed because that person is saying, I only want this much of you.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
really don't want your voice. I want you to be nice.
Yeah.
Is what the other person is saying.
Yeah.
I want you to be nice, and I don't want to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to eliminate that person from my life. I just now know what category of friendship we actually have.
Interesting. Yes. That is really insightful to think about how that moment redefined the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are times when you refuse to agree to disagree. When does that moment happen?
Yeah. When somebody is dehumanizing somebody else. So
Yeah.
the bar for me is somebody being dehumanized, is somebody being stereotyped or categorized, is their right to exist being challenged. And I know that can sound very dramatic, and yet we see it.
Mm-hmm.
And topics can come up in conversation where then, again, if we're in conversation and somebody makes a comment and I don't say, wait, we need to go back to that. I'm now complicit. When that person made that statement and I don't challenge it or say I disagree, I am complicit. That person would have every right to believe I believe like them. So let's just get to it. Let's just talk about specifics like immigration.
Mm-hmm.
Where if somebody is saying we need to have stronger borders, we need an immigration policy, absolutely. If somebody says those people are animals, oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
We're not gonna agree to disagree when your ideology is dehumanizing of another.
Exactly.
Keep going.
There is no agree to disagree. I'm just going to flat out say that's wrong. And I might also pull in, what is this person's belief system? What is their stated belief system?
Yeah.
So let's just say this person, they name themselves as a Christian. Then now I'm going to go there. I'm going to say, well, theologically, what about the Imago Dei? The idea from Genesis that every person is created in the image of God.
Yeah.
So we're all image bearers of God. So how does this view that those people are animals, how does that square with they're also image bearers of God? So you just told me a lot about your theology.
Mm-hmm. And again, see, look what you just did again. You invited us to be honest. So I'm not going to spar with you at, whether or not these people are animals or less than human or whatever, because that's nonsense. I'm going to call you to integrity.
Yes.
You, especially for people who are tied to the Christian tradition,
right.
Our theology is built on the fact that the divine fingerprint is etched into all of us.
Yes.
And there is no human hierarchy. And so I'm going to invite you to be integrous. Stand on the actual theology that you narrate.
Right. Because you said this is your theology, but I'm actually listening
Yes.
to your actual theology. The other is your mental assent to a theological system, but your actual theology,
Yeah.
what you believe about God, what you believe about people, you just told me. I mean, you look at every genocide, every disordered behavior in our society, it was based on the dehumanization
That's right.
of another group of people.
Yep.
Full stop. The whole idea of eugenics, the idea of race. It wasn't like somebody in a vacuum said, let me think about these racial categories. No, it was to justify
Yeah.
enslavement.
Yeah.
It was about money.
Yeah. It's greed.
It's greed. And
Greed
now
required human hierarchy.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because in order to justify that
Yeah.
treatment of people, you have to say that they're less than.
That's right.
And so we can go around the world and look at subjugation
Mm-hmm.
of people groups. And at the heart of it usually is greed,
Mm-hmm.
but there's dehumanization. Because
Yes.
you have to,
Yeah.
because I don't know too many people who can just look somebody in the eye and think they're an equal and dehumanize them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's right.
That
That's right.
doesn't happen. If you think they're an equal, then you're going to disagree with them on whatever the issue is, not on their very humanity.
Yeah. Yeah. Their right to exist.
The
That's
right
right.
to exist.
That's right.
And if we center on the US, the right to liberty, the right to freedom, the right to free expression. But the boundary there is free expression if you're not dehumanizing people.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So
Yeah.
that's the line for me, where
Got
that's
you.
we're never going to have a conversation
Yeah. Yeah.
where
And then
I'm not going to say, wait.
Yeah. 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 And that's again where your convictions and the way that you express and embody a theology that says that all of us are equally created in the divine image. What I appreciate so much about the way that you do this is that you so fundamentally believe in this and you yourself that like when someone's compromising that, you're going to hold them accountable. This is part of your magic in the way that you deal with conflict. I think once again is that you hold people accountable to the truth. You hold them accountable to integrity. You hold them accountable to the centrality of the relationship, and you're not afraid to be a little bit disruptive with kindness to hold us to these things. So we've talked about lots of different ideas, and you're so competent in the way that you talk about technique and your techniques. Give us a story. Let's close this conversation with a story of when you've actually had to put all of this into practice.
Yeah. Ooh, which story? I do practice this. I can think about a recent one that's fairly recent of a person we've deep relationship and long relationship, over 20 years. And over a topic that we agreed on, suddenly we're having a conversation and a person says, I no longer believe that. And I was stunned because of the kind of conversation we had before about it. I was really shocked. And the topic had a very strong racialized component.
Okay.
And racialized specifically with Black people. The other person that I was talking to was white. And so I had to pause before I got hijacked. And because in my body, I'm thinking, well, what do you think about me?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
So I just said, oh, okay, I need a minute. I need a minute. And then I just started asking, what happened? What changed? How did you go from here to here? And she responded by saying, she had taken in some information in a documentary.
Okay.
And I asked more questions about the documentary. And the documentary, I said, well, that person has had a very clear perspective, a pretty one-sided perspective from the beginning. So I would wonder if that's really well-rounded enough, or was that person just trying to prove a point? Are you willing to listen to or watch a different documentary that might show a different point of view? And the person wasn't. The person wasn't. No, this is what I believe. And I said, okay. And I had to, in that moment, go, what does that mean for us?
Yeah. In our friendship.
In our friendship.
Yeah.
Again, what does this mean? And what is she actually saying? Am I making this bigger by saying, well, if you don't agree with this situation, then that means you're not for Black people, and that means you're not for me. That wasn't fair, because that's not what she said.
So you wouldn't jump to premature conclusions.
Right. I couldn't allow myself to just, and believe me, my brain went there.
Of course.
And to go, wait a minute, back up. That's not what she said. So ask more questions. And it wasn't what she meant. What I then had to bring into play was some historical context on why I could perceive that as, you're speaking very generally, because here's how this has played out throughout history. Which slowed her down some, and she heard that. It didn't change her point of view, but it slowed us down enough to still see each other. And for me to say, ooh, this is, wow, I was not, one, expecting this. Two, I'm having to work hard. Here's the thing that happened in it is that I could see her fading away. I could see her moving away, not physically, but conflict culturally for her is avoidance. And I went in after her. Like, I want to keep talking about this. We clearly disagree. And I'm coming in after you. Because I'm not willing to give this relationship up over this.
So give us what does it mean that you came after her?
I just kept asking more questions and naming. I know this is difficult.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to convince you. You're getting quiet. I feel like I'm doing all the talking now. What does that mean?
Yeah, got you. Yep. So then the conversation ends, and here's where I feel like we stall out in our relationships, and as we deal with conflict in our relationships, is like that conversation, which was a hard conversation, kind of awkward. She's maybe beginning to lean out. You're trying to lean in. That conversation is over. Too often, I think we go, ugh, I don't know if I'm going to keep fighting for that relationship.
Right.
And that's kind of the last meaningful conversation that we ever have. And so how did you keep fighting for the relationship? How did you keep fighting for your oneness after the conversation was over?
Well, even while the conversation was still going on, when I could see in her eyes, she is standing on her position. I am standing on my position. And I could see a resolve, a finality for her, not necessarily on the relationship, but a finality of, this isn't going any further. I then said, I care about you. I love you. And too many relationships are dividing in these days, where then people are just polite and they call a truce.
Nice. Ooh.
And a truce is not peace.
Go. Say more.
Right? I don't want a truce.
Yeah.
That's not our relationship. And we have meant too much to each other to call a truce.
Yes.
And I think we're both clear on where we stand on this. And so we don't have to talk about it again. I mean, she clarified, even though this had a very strong racial dynamic, she wasn't saying that about me. She wasn't saying that about all Black people generally. She wasn't seeing it that way. I said, I could see it that way, but I'm going to trust you in what you just said to me.
Yeah.
Because our past history doesn't show me any reason that I shouldn't.
Yeah.
And so for me to not trust the journey that we've been on and stand on this and say, well, this means this, I don't have any proof of that. And I didn't leave the conversation. I was not going to let that conversation end without saying, I love you. And yes, we disagreed. And it was a sharp disagreement. And I don't want this to change our relationship. Like, you can trust that I'm not angry with you. I'm going to be honest. I'm really puzzled. I'm going to even say I'm disappointed. And I love you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to walk away.
I'm not walking away.
So,
not walking away.
Nina, we need episodes 2, 3, 4, and 5 to continue this conversation. We started with a moment that we find ourselves in where everything feels pretty overwhelming. The divides are widening, and the ache that many of us feel is in the interpersonal space. Not that we're not alarmed nor need to carry a sense of urgency around the larger conversation that's happening. The ache that so many of us feel is our relationships are crumbling, they're falling apart. And I think we've had ample space and time to talk some of that through. What's one gentle invitation you would offer to folk? And I'm going to even put you on the spot. As we do the interior work, as we do the interpersonal work, as we do the institutional work, what's a gentle invitation you might offer in each one of those spaces?
Yeah. For the interpersonal, does the relationship hold value? What I just described, I'm not doing that in every relationship. Some relationships are more like an acquaintance. There's not a value. I don't have that kind of capacity to do that with everybody that I might disagree with. So who are the core relationships?
Identify your core relationships.
Yeah. And the people that you just say, unless that person tells me flat out, I'm done with you, I'm going to fight for that relationship, or they do something so egregious that it demonstrates that their values have changed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, no, I'm holding. It grieves me the number of people who are letting relationships go and then they say they're lonely. I'm like, yeah. And I get it. They disagreed, but again, conflict just is. It's inevitable. Everything can't be we in the relationship worthy.
Right.
I mean, there are some things. Absolutely are some things. But some of the things that are being put in that category, to me, are not worthy of that. We're not giving people space to have their own opinions. So that was the interpersonal.
Yeah. What's a gentle invitation for us to do some interior work?
Yeah. The interior work is, why did this trip me up? What did it, I resist the word trigger because it's overused, but what switch got flipped? Where I was ready to go from 0 to 100. Was I no longer seeing this person and I saw all of society that I tried to then make this person the scapegoat for? So those are my internal questions.
So a little bit of self-interrogation, like in the aftermath.
Yes.
Pay attention to what tripped me up or what switch got flipped.
Yeah.
And wonder about it with yourself.
And wonder about it.
Yeah.
And wonder also, what can I do differently?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Was I too strong? Was I too dogmatic? Was I too forceful? Did I want to have the person keep talking about it when they were like, please, no more? Right? Those are the questions sometimes that I have to ask.
Got you.
But so in essence, it is self-interrogation.
Yep.
What was my role? If it didn't go well,
Yeah.
what was my role? Even if it did go well, what did that mean?
Yeah, that's good.
Is there follow-up that's needed?
Yes.
To assure the person that I meant what I said when I said I love them.
And then here we are, all of us live in systems and society, and all of us feel a certain way about all that's happening, not just in the United States, but around the world. And so we are all players in larger society. It's so easy to be overwhelmed into paralysis. What's a gentle invitation for those of us, all of us, who live in a fracturing society?
Yeah. Whether it's the person who is overwhelmed and wants to withdraw from everything, or the person who's ready to fight every battle. Pick one. What tugs at your highest value?
Mm-hmm.
That thing that tugs at your highest value, which if we say, well, it's the Imago Dei, it's that every person is an image bearer of God. Well, there's still a lot that could fit into that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then what's one thing that is pulling against that? Is it something in my direct community, whatever I identify as my most direct community? Then that's the thing. But we can't fight everything. And for those who really want to tap out, yeah, you got to show up.
Mm.
You got to show up. And the showing up is going to be different for everybody. Some people are frontline folks, body on the line, right? Some people voice on the line. For some people, yeah, write your poetry,
Mm-hmm.
write the book, write the blog, draw the picture,
paint the painting, draw the pic. Yeah.
sing the song,
Sing the song.
right? Whatever way you can express. And that's for the sake of your own soul. I am convinced that people that hold back and repress, it's like a flesh-eating bacteria. I don't mean to be so graphic, but it's damaging their own souls.
Yeah.
Because we can't numb to just one thing. If we're numbing our feelings, we're numbing our feelings.
Period.
Even the good feelings.
That's right.
And so what's the way that you express? For some people, it really is acts of kindness. If you witness something that's dehumanizing, the kryptonite to that for a person who is really a gentle spirit might be you're going to go out and you're going to do something for somebody that may even represent that same people group.
Mm-hmm.
Not in a patronizing way, but in a way that says, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to do this.
Yes.
So I'm saying engage. Don't sitting on the sidelines really isn't an option. And if we're making it an option, then we have to investigate that. What are we really saying? And some people are saying it overtly. It doesn't impact me. So then we're saying I'm selfish. If it doesn't impact me and it doesn't impact the people I care about, I don't care. Then just say you're selfish.
Yeah.
Now, this is me again.
She says with a twinkle and a grin. Oh, for sure.
Because we got to name.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. We will not change what we will not name.
Ooh, there it is.
We won't change. So when we're standing on the sideline saying, I just wish we could all get along.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. And I hear people saying that, I just want it to go back to the way it used to be. You mean when there was conflict that you just weren't involved in? Because there's not ever going to be a time.
Yeah.
But in this moment, to be on the sidelines is really saying you don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not until it impacts you that you're going to use your voice.
Come on. Nina, thank you. Thank you.
It's always good to be with you.
And
to spend what's real.
Yeah. To spend time talking about this disarms the boogeyman that is conflict. And just in the way that you narrate a conflict competent life is equipping the rest of us. So we're grateful. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Jer. Take care. Bye-bye.
The Mending Divides podcast is a production of Global Immersion. Learn more about our work companioning Western Christians on a journey from a religion that dominates to a faith that restores at globalimmerse.org.